The sun had barely climbed over the rolling fields when the farmer stepped out onto his land, boots crunching softly against the dew-covered grass. Mornings on the farm were usually predictable, feeding the animals, checking the fences, walking the familiar paths he'd walked for years. That day began no differently, until a faint sound drifted through the quiet air. It was small, fragile, and unmistakable, the sound of kittens crying. At first, he thought it must be the neighbor's cats again. Strays wandered through the countryside all the time, and farm cats were nothing unusual. Still, something about the sound felt urgent. It didn't come from the barn or the old shed where cats usually hid, but from the far edge of his property near a patch of tall grass and scattered rocks. Curious and a little concerned, he followed the noise. As he pushed aside the grass, he froze. Nestled together in a shallow hollow were several tiny kittens, their eyes barely open, their bodies pressed tightly against one another for warmth. They looked small and helpless, just like any newborn house cats. Their fur was soft and beautifully patterned, a mix of sandy browns and faint stripes that blended perfectly with the surrounding earth. The farmer knelt down, his heart instantly softening. He scanned the area for the mother, expecting her to appear at any second, hissing or darting away in fear. But there was no movement, no rustle of leaves, no watchful eyes peering from a distance. The kittens were alone. He waited. Minutes passed, then longer. The cries grew weaker. Worried that predators or the cold morning air might harm them, he made a decision. Carefully, he scooped the kittens into a crate lined with an old jacket and carried them back toward the farmhouse. He told himself he would only keep them safe until their mother returned or until he could find someone to help. Back at the house, his wife was just as surprised. Together, they examined the kittens more closely. That's when the first odd detail stood out. Their paws seemed unusually large for such tiny bodies. Their claws, even at this age, looked longer and sharper than those of normal kittens. One of them let out a sound, not quite a meow, but deeper, rougher, almost like a tiny growl. Probably just farm cats, the farmer said, though his voice lacked confidence. They fed the kittens warm milk using a dropper and made a small box for them near the stove. Over the next few days, the kittens grew stronger. Their eyes opened fully, revealing striking, intense gazes that seemed far too alert for their age. They didn't wobble clumsily the way most kittens did. Instead, they crawled with surprising coordination, already attempting to pounce on anything that moved. Neighbors came by to take a look. Some smiled and laughed, calling them wild-looking tabbies. Others felt uneasy. One older man squinted at the kittens and shook his head. "Those don't look like regular cats," he muttered. As weeks passed, the differences became impossible to ignore. The kittens grew faster than any house cats the farmer had ever seen. Their muscles became more defined, their movements smooth and powerful. They climbed, jumped, and stalked imaginary prey with natural skill. They weren't playful in the typical kitten way. They practiced hunting. One evening, while watching them from the porch, the farmer noticed something that sent a chill through him. One kitten locked its eyes onto a chicken across the yard. Its body flattened, tail low, movements silent. In a flash, it leapt, covering an impressive distance in a single bound. The farmer intervened just in time, scooping the kitten up before anything happened. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Concerned, the farmer contacted a local wildlife officer. When the officer arrived, one look at the kittens was enough to change the mood entirely. He crouched down, observing them quietly, noting their markings, their posture, the way they reacted to his presence. "These aren't house cats," he finally said. The words hit like a thunderclap. The officer explained that the kittens appeared to be wildcats, possibly a protected species native to the region. Their markings, body structure, and behavior matched those of a wild feline rarely seen near farms. It was likely that their mother had hidden them there, using the tall grass as camouflage, and something had driven her away, perhaps human activity, predators, or even an accident. Suddenly, everything made sense. The unusual cries, the powerful movements, the instinctive hunting behavior. The farmer felt a mix of awe and guilt. He hadn't meant to interfere with nature, yet here he was, having unknowingly removed wild animals from their natural environment. The officer stressed the importance of acting carefully. Wild kittens, even when young, were not meant to be raised like pets. If handled incorrectly, they could become dangerous or lose the ability to survive on their own. The goal, he explained, was reunification, getting the kittens back to their mother if possible. A plan was set in motion. The kittens were placed back near the spot where they had been found, inside a secure enclosure that would protect them from predators while allowing their mother to hear and reach them. The farmer and his family were instructed to keep their distance and watch from afar. Hours passed. Then, just as dusk settled over the fields, movement stirred at the edge of the grass. The farmer held his breath. Out of the shadows emerged a sleek, powerful shape. The wildcat mother moved cautiously, her eyes scanning the area, her body low and tense. She paused, sniffed the air, and let out a soft call. Almost instantly, the kittens responded, their cries filling the quiet evening. In a blur of motion, she reached the enclosure. After ensuring there was no immediate threat, she gathered her young one by one, gripping them gently by the scruff. Within minutes, they disappeared back into the wild, leaving nothing behind but flattened grass and a stunned, silent farmer. Relief washed over him, followed by wonder. In the days that followed, the story spread through the community. People came by just to hear it again, shaking their heads in disbelief. Many had lived on farms their entire lives and never witnessed something like that. It became a reminder of how close wild nature truly is, even in places that feel familiar and controlled. The farmer often returned to that spot, not expecting to see the wildcats again, but feeling connected to the moment. He had learned something important, that not everything small and cute is meant to be kept, and that sometimes the most loving thing a person can do is step back and let nature take its course. Occasionally, he thought he caught glimpses of movement at the edge of the fields, a shadow slipping between the grasses, a pair of glowing eyes watching from afar. Whether it was imagination or reality, he couldn't say. But one thing was certain. Those kittens were never ordinary house cats. They were a powerful reminder of the wild world that still exists alongside us, quiet and hidden, waiting for the moments when it briefly reveals itself, leaving us shocked, humbled, and forever changed. Days turned into weeks after the wildcat mother reclaimed her young, yet the memory refused to fade from the farmer's mind. Life on the farm returned to its familiar rhythm, feeding livestock, repairing fences, watching the weather, but something had changed inside him. Every rustle in the grass now carried meaning. Every distant sound felt like a whisper from the wild he had briefly touched. He found himself waking earlier than usual, standing on the porch with a mug of tea, scanning the fields as the mist lifted. The land felt older somehow, as if it held stories he had never truly listened to before. He realized that for years he had believed the farm belonged to him, but now he understood it was shared, quietly, invisibly, with creatures that followed rules far older than his own routines. One early morning, he noticed tracks near the creek. At first glance, they looked like large cat prints, pressed clearly into the soft mud. He crouched down, heart racing, tracing their shape with his eyes. They were fresh. The wildcats hadn't gone far. Instead of fear, a strange sense of honor filled him. The land had accepted him as a neighbor, not an intruder. The wildlife officer returned a few days later, checking in and confirming what the farmer already suspected. The mother wildcat had likely chosen the area because it was relatively safe and rich with prey. Farms, when balanced and not overrun by human disturbance, could become unexpected sanctuaries. The officer encouraged the farmer to make small changes, leave certain areas untouched, reduce noise near the tall grass, and avoid clearing brush during breeding seasons. The farmer agreed without hesitation. Soon, subtle changes appeared across the property. Rabbits darted more freely. Birds nested closer to the fields. Even the farm dogs seemed calmer, as if sensing the unspoken rules of the land had shifted. The farmer's children, once eager to explore every corner, learned to observe from a distance, turning curiosity into respect. One evening, just before sunset, something remarkable happened. As the farmer walked along the fence line, he spotted a shape perched on a rock near the tree line. It was larger now, more defined. A young wildcat, no longer a helpless kitten, watched him silently. Its eyes held recognition, not affection, not fear, but awareness. Neither moved. The moment stretched, fragile and electric. Then, as quietly as it appeared, the wildcat slipped away, melting into the shadows. The farmer stood frozen long after it was gone, aware he had been granted a rare privilege. He hadn't tamed the wild. He had simply been acknowledged by it. Word of the encounter spread, and soon a local conservation group reached out. They were studying wildcat migration patterns and habitat expansion, and the farmer's land had become a point of interest. Cameras were set up discreetly, and what they captured amazed everyone. Not one, but several wildcats were using the fields at night, moving gracefully through paths that avoided human spaces entirely. The footage revealed the kittens' growth, now nearly full-sized juveniles, learning to hunt under their mother's watchful eye. She guided them patiently, correcting mistakes, teaching silence, timing, and restraint. It was a masterclass in survival, unfolding just beyond the reach of everyday life. The farmer watched the recordings with quiet pride. He hadn't raised the kittens, but in some small way, he had helped protect them. That realization brought a deeper sense of purpose than any harvest ever had. Yet coexistence wasn't without challenges. One night, a chicken coop was disturbed. No birds were taken, but feathers scattered the ground. Instead of reacting with anger, the farmer reinforced the coop, understanding that survival drove such encounters. Balance, he learned, required effort from both sides. Seasons shifted, winter came and went, and with spring arrived new life across the farm. The wildcats remained elusive but present. Their tracks appeared occasionally, their calls echoed faintly on still nights. They were no longer a shocking discovery but a quiet truth woven into the land's story. The farmer noticed how his perspective had changed. He spoke differently to neighbors, encouraged patience, and shared his experience whenever someone found an unfamiliar animal on their property. Not everything needed to be rescued, he explained. Sometimes, the best help was understanding when not to interfere. One afternoon, as storms gathered on the horizon, he spotted the wildcat mother again, older now, her movements confident but cautious. This time, she wasn't alone. One of her grown offspring followed closely, mirroring her steps. The farmer realized then that the cycle was continuing. New territories would be claimed. New hiding places would be chosen. The land would remember. That night, rain fell gently, soaking the earth. The farmer slept deeply, at peace with the knowledge that he had done right by the creatures who briefly crossed his path. He no longer felt the urge to control every inch of his property. Instead, he felt like a caretaker of something far larger than himself. Years later, visitors still asked him about the kittens. He would smile, lean back, and tell the story slowly, carefully, never exaggerating. The truth, after all, was extraordinary enough. He spoke of surprise, fear, responsibility, and respect. And he always ended the same way. They were never meant to be mine, he'd say. They belong to the wild. I was just lucky enough to meet them. Long after the words faded, the fields remained, quiet, watchful, alive with unseen movement. And somewhere beyond the tall grass, the descendants of those kittens continued to roam, carrying forward a story that began with a simple cry on a peaceful morning and changed a man's understanding of the world forever.